My latest book review is coming up in just a moment. Hey everybody, I'm Mel from Melsdivination. I'm the owner, the operator, and the creator here, and today is Witchy Wednesday. I do apologize, I've fallen behind on some of my filming. There is a reason. I am going to release a video about that in a day or two, but for now, it's Witchy Wednesday, and you guys have been long overdue a book review. I believe a while back I asked the community if they wanted a book review regularly, weekly, monthly, not weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, and I think you guys voted bi-monthly or once a month. I can't remember, but it's definitely been a longer time than a month since the last time I did a book review. With all that being said, we're going to jump right in. First and foremost, though, I do want to remind you guys, I do have a website. It's melsdivination.com. If you like the content here, definitely check out the website, subscribe to the channel, share, like, all the good stuff to support the channel. The book we're going to go over today is Understanding the Tarot Court. This is by Mary Greer and Tom Little. I know this is backwards. I'm going to put a picture somewhere for that. For you. Now, originally, I was going to do both of her books that I have, Tarot Court and Tarot Reversals. But as I started filming this, like I'm editing and this is going to be at the beginning, although I'm done filming, I realized how long the video got, and I wanted to be able to do the Tarot Reversal book, its due diligence, and we're going to do a totally separate video next week under Tarot Reversals, okay? Today, we're just doing the Tarot Court. Now, this does have charts and stuff in it, so if you are interested in the charts, comment down below, and I will put likely a picture of each chart in the community tab over time because that's probably the easiest way to do it. So we are going to jump right in. I cut out a bunch of stuff that when I did the intro about both books, so you may see me talk about this book a tiny bit just in case if you get confused. But today is just Tarot Court, and then next week will be Tarot Reversals. This book was published in 2004. It has 9 chapters, which break down in detail different approaches to the cards. It also has 4 appendix A through D, and those are charts, okay? One of the things I really like about this book is at the very beginning in the introduction, she instructs the reader to do something called a tarot journal, which I feel is really good to kind of establish your experience with the tarot, your knowledge with the tarot, and just your relationship with the tarot and like tracking that. So she talks about start a tarot journal, and then she has a lot in both books. I don't believe she talked about a tarot journal in this one though. In both books, she talks about a lot of exercises. She gives exercises throughout the book for you to do to get more comfortable with the understanding of the tarot, which is great. Actually, I did want to quickly say these are intermediate books of tarot. They are not beginner. She does go over some stuff that is beginner, yes, like a kind of like refresher, but these are definitely more of the you've been reading tarot for a while, you're more comfortable with some of the tarot, and you are now wanting to go a bit deeper, okay? Because it is very detailed. Each book, this book has 251 pages in it, fine print. It's not big print. So again, I recommend you getting this if you've been on your tarot journey for a while, or if you just want to check it out a little bit. You will get overwhelmed if you're not familiar with tarot. Just so you know, just an FYI. You could just jump to some of the references. That's actually how I started with these books, is just using them as the reference guide, and then I got more deep in them as time has gone by. I read both of them again today, skimmed them so that I could take proper notes to go over this with you guys, okay? So I'm going to go over each chapter, a little bit of a breakdown of this tarot court. I'm not going to hold this up the entire time, but tarot court. And I'm going to get through all the little things that I like about it and some of my notes, my information, thoughts about it, okay? Chapter 1 is the many faces of the court. It introduces basically where the court cards originated from, gives a little bit of a back history. It breaks down the suit and the rank of each type. Basically suit, so suits meaning, if you're not familiar with tarot, again, this is going to be a little bit too in-depth, but suits meaning water, cups, pentacles, earth, swords, air, and wands, fire, okay? She does cover a little bit of other information around the suits, like other ways that some of the suits have been called. And then she goes over the court cards, king, queen, knight, page. She also goes over some of the other known names for those characters as well. She also goes over a lot of the different types of decks. This book is based on the Rider-Waite Tarot with the traditional cards that many of you have probably seen. It's based off of that for the most part, but there's a lot of other tarot decks. And this book was published in 2004. So there was even a lot of tarot decks back then that represented things differently, like prince and princess instead of page and knight, things like that. Wands maybe are staffs or rods. So she breaks all of that down in the beginning. So that's really good that is good for somebody that is a new reader, a new person getting associated with the tarot. Now, she also explains the court cards as signifiers. She gets into that. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to get into it here. That's a whole nother thing, which is why I said it's important to know some basics of tarot. And then she ends the chapter with exercises to do in your tarot journal, some things to get familiar with the court cards. So this entire book is only about the court cards: page, knight, queen, king. Okay, that's what this whole book is about in each different element suit. Chapter 2 is court card family. This talks about the cup suits first, mainly as an example of how they are seen as family members. And then she gives us a bunch of practice exercises with some types of spreads to practice. This is very detailed, okay? It really goes into depth of, all right, so she gives an example of the cups. Now you're expected to do pentacles, wands, and swords, okay? This is almost like a textbook, sort of. Then she compares the Rider-Waite-Smith, RWS for abbreviation, a lot of authors call it that, to the Thoth Tarot. I've been getting tongue-tied trying to say that. TOTH Tarot. That one was pretty popular back then in the day. It's not as well known now. People still use it, but it's a little bit of a different setup and system. I don't have that tarot. I don't connect with it. I learned on the Rider-Waite-Smith, so that's on that system, so that's where I go. There's nothing wrong with the Thoth Tarot. It just is a different type of setup, okay? So she compares the two. In chapter 3, she talks about the court in society, all right? So this is a little bit interesting. It's very detailed history and background. It really gets down to the nitty-gritty of literally court people back in the day and how these cards started and how it evolved over time and why, and the thought process behind it, okay? So it really goes into depth around the court cards and how it looked in the world, literally society, meaning people, meaning world. And then she does a few spreads, tarot spreads for practice at the end. Chapter 4 is the court within. What that means is breaking down the personality, basically. Court within us. So we each have some kind of court card that we connect with the most, that we represent the most, or that may represent us the most, okay? So then she gets into all the characteristics: personality, astrology, Myers-Briggs type indicator, which you guys probably know what that is if you're on social media, but you don't realize that's what it's called. It's extrovert, introvert. A lot of people use the abbreviations like INTJ, things like that. those kinds of abbreviations of what kind of personality type are you. Myers-Briggs is where that started. That's the name of the test, the indicator. Then she goes over a personality quiz for the cards and that you can take. She does Jungian archetypes, which you guys probably also aren't super familiar with, but that's a psychologist, an old psychologist. That's part of shadow work in categorizing archetypes. Carl Jung was the name, and it was a long time ago. It also covers reversed and reading reversed. She doesn't go over reverse and anything else in this book. That's it. Reverse and reading in reversals. Chapter 5 is the court card relationships. So relationships to each other and how it shows up in relationships. This is friends and family. Projecting our own opinion on things. And then she gets into the ethics of reading in relationships. And I actually really like this because a lot of tarot authors don't talk about ethics or the points of view of like questions of should I or shouldn't I. She really gets in deep because she's been doing tarot, I believe in one of the books it said 30 years she's been teaching tarot. So she's formulated these books by all of these questions that have come up over the years with her students and turned them into something, which I think is fascinating. So when she gets into the ethics and relationship readings, I was never taught about ethics when I learned. My original teacher didn't teach me. My next teacher didn't teach me. My next teacher didn't teach me. They didn't talk about that at all. It wasn't until I was working professionally on psychic hotlines that I noticed, and I was in that work community, that I was noticing that some people had certain rules. And what is that about? Why do you have those rules? So for instance, she gets into she starts talking about third party people. A lot of people with third party readings. She gives an example. She gets really deep and explains it. So what she means is, if you're reading for somebody, let's say you're the reader, you're the tarot reader, and you're reading for a client who wants to know about their husband, but their husband is not there. Is that ethical? It's a gray area because now you're getting into privacy issues. And so a lot of people talk about that. Then also a third party person. So even somebody even further out, maybe you want to know about your husband's sister or husband's person that they work with. So there's that as well. So she covers some of that. And I really appreciate that as somebody that has worked professionally as a tarot reader and still does. Those kinds of things I wish I had read about when I was younger and first starting out, because it would have helped me create my own philosophy and ideas around that, my morality. Now she goes over believing in spiritual karma for interfering in other people's relationships. She advises ways around it, and she talks about how to shift the focus. So I used that relationship marriage thing, right? Husband. So let's say the client wants to know about their spouse, their husband, they're married. Instead, switch it to doing a reading around the marriage, the client's marriage, instead of the client's husband. So she gives different points of views and approaches and ways to approach things. I also love, because things like that I would have never thought of and really haven't, honestly, to this day. I would have never even thought of doing it that way. So I think that is fascinating. She also talked about multiple court cards in a reading and how to work through that, what that means. On chapter 6, she talks about the tarot in the cosmos. This was so incredibly fascinating. So if you like things like the tarot aligned with astrology, this is the chapter you really want to check out. I did do a video. It was my last flip through Friday. I did a video with cards that were labeled with the astrological aspects. So as I mentioned, I got this deck with the astrology on it. This is an example. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, you guys, I can't zoom in anymore because it doesn't focus for some reason. So it just has the symbols on it. And I had said in it, I don't know if this astrology is actually aligned and correct, and I need to research it more because I didn't know if they connected, and some of the cards definitely aren't accurate as far as that is concerned. But that was actually the entire reason why I bought that deck, to get more acquainted, to go another layer deeper for myself. Because even in this book, she only covers the court cards, like I said. So she's not talking about the Nine of Wands or the Ace of Swords. She's talking about King, Queen, Page, Knight. That's it. Okay? Now, in the Cosmos chapter, she goes over multiple astrology approaches. She covers numerology, she covers Kabbalah, and the Tree of Life, which is so cool. Then chapter 7 brings it all together. It's basically summarizing main points. It goes over general readings for others, and I think that that's really good, but I also feel that that's kind of out of place of where it's popping up in the book. She already talked about relationship ethics and readings around that. I feel like that should have come before the ethics discussion somewhere, somehow, if I was the one organizing it. But I'm literally just nitpicking, right? Like I'm picking it apart if I had to complain about something, because I feel like chronologically that doesn't really make sense to my brain anyway. Chapter 8, she talks about building your own court. And this is more geared for people that have thought about making their own tarot deck. And there's literally charts in there about how to create, what kind of personality do you want your pages to look like? What kind of personality do you want your knights to look like? What are their actual categories? What are their attributes? How are you going to break it up? So there's lots of charts about that, which I think is an amazing tool if you're ever interested in trying to make your own deck. Chapter 9, she talks about court card interpretations. So that is the part where she literally has each. So this one is Queen of Swords. All of this is Queen of Swords. These are 4 different types of, it doesn't matter, you don't have to see the actual words, but there's 4 different types of Queens of Swords that she put in here. Okay, from different decks, and then she gets in detail. So she goes over roles, personality styles, stresses, weaknesses, samples. So she goes over like for each single court card: Queen of Swords, Queen of Pentacles, Queen of Cups, Queen of Wands. You get the point. She breaks each one down like that. So that whole chapter is that. I also feel like this chapter should have been sooner for more of a frame of reference for beginners. So this is what I mean by you kind of want to be more intermediate, because when she gets into this chapter, it's kind of like, that would have been good to know before, because she gets into some depth about some of these other cards in some of the other chapters, and you need a frame of reference. Like if you don't know what the Queen of Swords is, then how are you gonna, so it's a little, I feel it's a tiny bit backwards with organizing, in my opinion. Then she goes over each suit, I just said that, and each character, she breaks them into specific categories. She shows multiple pictures from multiple decks and multiple authors. At the end, there is a bibliography and additional references mentioned throughout the entire book, usually after each chapter. So I do find that this is an amazing book. I really, really liked it. I found that it really goes into a deeper understanding and knowledge than a basic tarot book of, oh, that's my King of Wands, right? So it makes you think outside of the box for sure. And is she the only one that you should read? No, absolutely not. This is not your end-all book. And in fact, she even says that. She says to use the information as how it resonates with you. She goes over that. That's one of the things I really like about this author, is she tells you that you need to be the one that's connecting to it. It needs to be your intuition, your feelings, what applies in your world, and how it actually works for you. I love that about her, because this is something that genuinely is part of being a tarot reader and not memorizing everything, using what feels right. Okay, so I love that, and I love all the different extra references that there are. That wraps up tarot court cards, understanding the tarot court cards. I do really like this book. I do really like this author and a lot of the way that she approaches things, especially for intermediate readers. There will be another book review by this author coming up. I probably will do it next week. Tarot Reversals. So this book, I do have to say, it is a really good book. I didn't tell you how much it was because I got it for free from a friend, like I said. $14.95 when it was first published. I hope to see you guys soon. Bye for now.